I still can't believe my brother-in-law got into a car accident. It just doesn't seem real. Kelly, you must be taking this the hardest, right? I'll be there for you for the rest of your life, so please cheer up. My brother, Tom, passed away 13 days ago. Just as my husband, Andrew, said, it was because of a car accident. Without parents, my brother was like a parent to me. This was known by Andrew and our relatives, so they gathered today, understanding how I felt. Hearing Andrew's kind words, the relatives around us nodded in agreement. Amidst this, I said to my husband, Andrew, can you say the same after seeing this? As I said that, I handed him a letter. Andrew looked puzzled, as if he had no idea about the letter. None of the relatives knew what the letter was about either, sharing the same puzzled look as Andrew. When I first saw the letter, I was shaking. However, I was certain that Andrew would shake even more than I did. This letter is from my brother. From Tom? The letter was in a long, brown envelope, neatly folded in thirds, just like my meticulous brother would do. I opened the envelope and slowly checked the contents. Kelly, what does it say? Before Andrew could ask, my in-laws showed interest in the letter's contents. It's about my brother's worries. When I said that, my in-laws tilted their heads in confusion. Huh? Worries, you say? I thought Tom had a happy marriage with Kate, and both his family and job were going well. Yeah, he looked really happy last time we met. I can't imagine he had any worries. What do you say, Kate? Yes. My husband never complained about his job, and he always seemed happy and smiling when he was at home. It's hard to believe he would go out of his way to write down his worries in a letter. I've heard that my brother's married life was nothing but happiness. It's sad that, now that he's gone, we have to talk about it in the past tense, but I've never met a man as honest and kind as my brother, and I was envious of Kate for having caught such a man. Of course, they were a couple who seemed to live peaceful days without any fights. It must have never crossed their minds that my brother was harboring worries or that he had left them in a letter. He was never the type of a person to complain to others, but when we got married, we made a promise. No secrets between us, let's talk about anything and everything, even the small things. So, if he had any serious worries, he would have told me. Then my husband, Andrew, spoke solemnly as if agreeing with everyone else. Tom and I worked in the same department at the same company, and I was his boss. Even from my perspective, he didn't seem troubled. He was a good guy loved by everyone, an indispensable asset to the company. He was still so young, with his whole life ahead of him. It's truly sad to have lost such a person. At my husband's words, the relatives murmured in agreement, saying, "It's true, exactly," and the living room was enveloped in a somber atmosphere. But I was different. What were you saying earlier, Andrew? I couldn't help but burst out laughing. What's the matter, Kelly? Laughing at a time like this? What's so funny? It's disrespectful. My husband scolded me in a flustered manner. Everyone present seemed puzzled by my sudden laughter. Kelly, are you all right? My in-laws looked into my face with concern. Kate's lips twitched nervously. I knew it was inappropriate, but what my husband said was just too funny, and I couldn't hold it in. Seeing me continue to laugh, my husband clapped his hands and said, "Oh, I get it. Kelly must be emotionally unstable from losing her brother. Poor thing. She must be forcing herself to laugh just to keep it together." Then, he gently hugged my shoulder and slowly helped me to stand up. Maybe you should rest a bit, Kelly. Sorry, you must be tired, right? After all, even though they're relatives, everyone here is practically a stranger to you. But as he tried to take me to the bedroom, I stopped laughing abruptly and glared at him. Andrew? He looked at me with a puzzled face. I'm not going to let you kick me out as the troublemaker so easily. What? What's gotten into Kelly? My sudden shifts from laughing to anger had my husband and the relatives looking at me with worried eyes. No, really, you're acting a bit strange. The funeral just ended, you must be exhausted. You should lie down, Andrew said with a forced smile as he grabbed my arm. But as he tried to take me back to the bedroom again, I forcefully shook off his hand. Don't touch me. Hey, Kelly. Cut it out. Everyone's worried about you. Finally, Andrew started to get angry. That's when I unfolded the letter from my brother and said, I'm going to share the message my brother left. I'll prove to everyone here that you're a liar. What did you say? Andrew's face changed color. It seemed he sensed something. Wait, let me see that, he said, trying to snatch the letter from me. But I dodged his hand and began to read the letter in front of the relatives. At first, the relatives were half exasperated, half worried, wondering if I was all right. But soon everyone's face changed to a perplexed look. By the time Kelly reads this letter, I might no longer be in this world. Yes, my brother had anticipated his own death when he left this letter. I remember getting goosebumps the first time I read my brother's letter. It was as if he had predicted his own death, and I was so scared, I couldn't stand it. And the continuation of the letter was even more intense. You might not believe this, but I am being threatened by your husband. If anything happens to me, please protect Kate. The relatives looked at each other. Suddenly, the harsh word threatened was mentioned. And that my husband was the one threatening him, something nobody could have anticipated. Wait a minute. What do you mean by threatened? Andrew, did you do something to Tom? My father-in-law quickly questioned, and my husband, in a flustered manner, vigorously shook his head. No way, I would never do something like that. Tom and I had a good relationship both personally and professionally. We were close enough to go out drinking together. Threatening him is absolutely out of the question. That letter is a bunch of lies. Then, saying give that to me, Kelly, he reached out to snatch my brother's letter. But I held it close so he couldn't take it. Damn it! My husband clicked his tongue and glared at me with resentment. If you say anything else, I won't agree to it. He pressured me with his eyes like that. As if I care. I'm going to expose everything here. I muttered to myself and then continued reading the letter. Kelly's husband, using his position as a supervisor, harassed me at work. He is truly a cowardly person. To ensure his wrongdoings wouldn't be discovered by the company, he used Kate and Kelly as leverage, making it impossible for me to argue back. He threatened me, saying if I defied him, your wife and sister wouldn't be safe. Kelly, please be very careful. If possible, you should divorce him as soon as you can. At this point, my father-in-law interjected. I know Tom wasn't the kind of person to lie, but this is hard to believe. Andrew, you've been getting better evaluations at work since you started working with Tom, right? It seems like you two were also close outside of work, so it's hard to imagine there was any problem between you two. The relatives seemed to share my father-in-law's view, all frowning and looking at me with suspicion. They must think the letter is a fake or just a story I made up. Kelly, do you have any proof that Tom wrote that letter? If you can't prove it was his handwriting, I don't think we can conclude it's his. For all we know, someone could have written it as a prank. That's right, just like Dad said. It must have been someone with a grudge against me, pretending to be Tom. Why would I harass Tom, who I owe so much to? Come on, Kelly, I understand you're upset about losing your brother-in-law, but reading such nonsense is crazy. This letter was either written by someone trying to frame me, or it's just your delusion. Don't do something that would sadden Tom in heaven. My husband was emboldened as the relatives began to doubt the content of the letter. He said this as if to correct me, then finally snatched the letter from my hands and stuffed it carelessly into his pocket. All right, let's say the letter was a lie and end this discussion. Let's talk about the good times with Tom. After all, we gathered here today to remember him. But as my husband tried to forcibly change the subject, I said, "Oh, we're not finished yet," and took out my laptop, turning it on. A laptop? Since when did you have that? Well, I rarely use it. I usually only use a computer for work. I try not to bring work home, so it's rare for me to open a laptop in the living room. So, my bringing out the laptop was a surprise to my husband, but in fact, I'm more familiar with computers than he is. And today, I had it charged and on standby for a specific purpose. Come on, what are you starting now? If you're going to pull out something like that letter, just stop. No one has time to indulge in your fantasies. Seeing me clicking away at the mouse, my husband couldn't hide his irritation. It's not a fantasy. I'm going to show everyone that this is written by my brother. Huh? My husband looked at me incredulously. What appeared on the laptop screen was a video. Take a good look, who do you see? When I pressed the play button, 2 men in suits appeared on the screen. The location was inside a car. Oh, Tom. Kate whispered softly, her hand covering her mouth. The men on the screen were my brother and husband. Perhaps she had been holding back until now. Tears began to overflow from her eyes. I regretted it for a moment. Maybe showing this video to her, who had just lost her beloved husband, was too cruel. But it was necessary to reveal the truth. I'm sorry, Kate. Can you bear with it for just a little while? I paused the video and clasped my hands together towards Kate. It's okay. Continue, Kelly. Encouraged by Kate, I played the video again. My brother was driving, and my husband was in the passenger seat. What? Why does this exist? At first, my husband stared blankly at the laptop screen, but as the conversation between him and my brother began to be audible, he visibly paled. The content was just as the letter described. In the video, my husband was pressuring my brother, saying, "If you don't want your wife and sister to be scared." His manner of speaking was domineering, completely different from his usual demeanor. Normally, my husband is quite approachable and seldom raises his voice. Yet, in the video, he was intimidating my brother like a completely different person. My brother looked distressed. "I won't allow you to take my wife and sister as hostages," he protested, yet it was clear he was afraid of harm coming to his loved ones. He seemed to have no choice but to comply with my husband's demands. Stop this. Before the video ended, my husband frantically closed the laptop. It's not true, it's all lies. Kelly, what is this? Did you create a fake video to frame me? It's not fake. You can see for yourself, right? You and Tom were always out on sales visits together, weren't you? This video was just from one of those days. But there's no way Tom and I would have such a conversation. Everyone believes me, right? Sweat formed on my husband's forehead as he looked around at the relatives. But it was too late. Too bad for you. You have no allies here anymore. I said dismissively. Then I asked the relatives, clearly, that was Andrew and Tom in the video, wasn't it? Hesitantly, they all nodded. A letter might be fake, but there's no doubting video evidence. My father-in-law's face was beet red, as if he was about to explode with anger. Yet, he still seemed to want to believe in his son. He asked me calmly, "Kelly, where exactly did you get that video?" "From my brother." "From Tom? Are you saying he recorded it himself?" "Did you receive it directly from Tom while he was still alive?" "No, I didn't receive it directly from him. All I got was the combination to a locker." "A locker?" "Yes. In a locker at the station my brother specified, there was both the letter and the video data. This video was recorded by a surveillance camera my brother installed in his car. It seems he wanted to show me Andrew's true nature and, in case something happened, to have evidence." Looking at my husband, he seemed quite flustered. Unable to make excuses, his face was pale, and his eyes darted around nervously. No wonder. He had been unaware of the surveillance camera, threatening my brother and spewing abuse. And now, knowing my husband's true nature, the relatives were in an uproar. "Andrew, why did you do this? What was your reason for threatening Tom?" "That's terrible. What did Tom ever do to you? Explain yourself properly." My in-laws and Kate pressed my husband for answers. Especially Kate, who had lost the husband she loved. It was natural for her to be angry at Andrew for threatening Tom. I had no choice but to do this. My husband sighed deeply, as if resigned, and began to talk about my brother. I was surprised when Tom joined the company midway through his career. Despite being my brother-in-law, he became one of my subordinates. So, at first, it was awkward, and I even wished one of us would be transferred. But that feeling quickly vanished. Working with him, my performance at the company improved. We were praised by our boss as a great duo. Tom and I would go out for drinks after work and firmly shook hands, promising to keep up the good work. But in reality, it was mostly thanks to him. Without Tom, I was nothing. Realizing this, he gradually became an obstacle to me. That's why I started to shift my work mistakes onto him and harass him. That's awful. To think you improved thanks to Tom and then treated him like that. Kate lunged at my husband. Trembling, my husband continued. I did it knowing the company would find out. I didn't care if my own reputation suffered. That's how much I hated Tom. The nerve. To think you were on good terms, and yet you did things that made Tom hate you. Kate spat out angrily. She looked like she was about to slap my husband. Tom never blamed me, he said, and Kate let go of him. Why? After you did such terrible things to him, Tom didn't even complain to his superiors? Far from blaming me, Tom took the responsibility upon himself and covered for me. That hurt my pride even more, and I ended up harassing him even further. Pride? You really are selfish. I know. But every time Tom covered for me, I was reminded of my own incompetence and felt miserable. So, I pushed him into a corner until it was almost too late, and the company was about to find out, and then my husband trailed off, and I picked up where he left off. So, my brother finally noticed something was wrong and protested. You used Kate and me as a shield because you were afraid Tom would tell the company the truth, right? I had no choice. If I lost my job, you would be in trouble too, right? I'm appalled. I sighed deeply. Tom had always been kind to those around him and strict with himself since we were kids. And he never blamed anyone else, no matter the situation. Thinking about how he must have blamed himself and struggled with the harassment from my husband, it hurt. Knowing Tom's gentle nature, my husband repeated the harassment. I was seething inside. My in-laws seemed to feel the same way, showing their anger towards my husband. How could you? After all the help you got from Tom, you repay him with betrayal. I'm so disappointed in you. You're not just unfit to be a boss, but unfit as a person. My in-laws had believed in the trust and partnership between my husband and Tom, both as work partners and brothers-in-law. Yet, my husband exploited Tom and, when his wrongdoings were about to be exposed, used threats as his last resort. They must have felt betrayed. I really am sorry. It started as just a bit of harassment, but nobody stopped me, and I just couldn't control myself anymore. Saying this, my husband collapsed to his knees. And then deeply bowed to everyone. Despite our past conflicts, my respect for Tom hasn't changed. I'm remorseful now, please forgive me. I beg of you. He apologized desperately, bowing repeatedly to each relative. Moved by his actions, Kate and the other relatives' expressions softened slightly, but my anger was far from subsiding. Because I knew there was more my husband was hiding. Hey Andrew, can you look up at me for a moment? Kelly. Thinking I would forgive him, my husband looked at me with pleading eyes. Is there something else you haven't told us? Huh? The cause of Tom's car accident was you, wasn't it? What? My husband froze with his mouth open. He probably thought that apologizing for the harassment would settle everything. But he was sorely mistaken. The real condemnation was just beginning. Kelly, what do you mean by that? Kate's face twisted again. Actually, Tom's car accident was orchestrated by Andrew. He tampered with the car to cause the accident. What did you say? I thought it was strange that Tom would have an accident. As you know, Kate, Tom's driving was too cautious. It was unthinkable for him to speed and crash. Indeed, that's true. So, I reviewed the surveillance footage again. And there it was, Andrew crawling on the car floor, tampering with the brakes. How could you? Kate was speechless and glared at my husband. My in-laws and the other relatives looked at him with piercing gazes. Why do you think Tom went through the trouble of leaving the letter and video data in a station locker? Indeed, if they were brothers, he could have just handed it directly. Why would Tom use a locker? Andrew had been monitoring me. I had discovered that he had placed surveillance cameras in my room. Earlier, Andrew said he couldn't help himself, but that was a lie. His actions were premeditated. He intended to eliminate Tom from the start. Tom used the station locker to prevent Andrew from finding out. If I had kept it at home, there was a risk Andrew would take it. While I was speaking, my husband remained silent, perhaps anticipating the grim future that awaited him. He soon began to tremble. On the other hand, the relatives' anger had reached its peak. The fact that my husband had pretended to care about me losing my brother and his apologies about not being able to stop himself were all acts. It was only natural for them to be furious. You've really shown your true colors, Andrew. I'm utterly disappointed in you. We will never forgive you. We're taking you to the police right now. Surrounded by relatives, my husband backed away. Kelly, please help me. Anything but the police. I beg you. Despite him clinging to me with tearful eyes, I snorted and pushed him away. People like you deserve to face the consequences. But we're married, aren't we? Don't joke with me. I'm filing for divorce. Kelly, don't abandon me. As he pleaded desperately, the icy stares of the relatives bore into him. Subsequently, my husband was arrested by the police. Naturally, he lost his job and was disowned by my in-laws, making his return to society after release a daunting task. My in-laws regretted not noticing the change in my husband, and Kate regretted not seeing the change in her husband. They apologized to me, but I had regrets too. Being his sister, I didn't notice my brother's distress until it was too late. If only I had detected the signs of my brother's troubles earlier and stopped my husband's rampage, perhaps my brother would still be alive today, a thought that brought tears to my eyes. But looking at my brother's portrait, I remembered how he always put others before himself, worrying about everyone else. If I kept crying, he wouldn't be able to rest peacefully in heaven. Deciding not to worry him any longer, I wiped away my tears. I had to live a long life, for my brother's sake. I lifted my head, ready to start